What's going on, YouTube? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the How to All-Wheel Drive Your Honda build. Today, as you can see, we have our motor almost ready for full assembly. Let me flip around the camera. So I have the bottom end already assembled. If you aren't familiar with the build, this is a 95mm stroker Eagle crank, B16 Manley rods with some YCP high compression pistons using a P8R head, a ported, opened up, and welded back together B16 manifold, and it's gonna have a lot of nitrous. And for today's process, we are going to be pulling apart the all-wheel drive B-Series transmission. We're going to be taking the full case off and be taking off one of the shift forks so we can reinforce it tomorrow, as well as installing this Phantom Grip unit. For those of you who aren't familiar with Phantom Grip, this was actually very popular in the early 2000s. This is about a $100 unit. You can find it for cheaper, or back in the day, they cost about $200. It's basically a locker for the differential, and it's basically a cheater LSD. It's not crazy good under high horsepower, although it's been proven to about 800 horsepower, but it does put strain on the OEM differential casing. But for these lower horsepower applications like the one that we're doing right now, and for the budget aspect of the build, we are going to be using it. Here we have the all-wheel drive B-Series transmission in all its glory. We're gonna start the disassembly of it. There is a bolt that I'm told holds the bell housing, but is actually on the inside, just a 12mm bolt. We're gonna be removing that, as well as the transfer case and everything, which are just, I believe, 14mm bolts, bolt heads, for everybody who's wondering that I'm not using the correct terminology. But they're, yes, 14mm bolt or socket fits on there perfectly. 1, 2, 3, and I have the fourth one missing already. I'm just going to remove that. That way we can set the transmission safely on its face and start taking the case off of the transmission. All right. Just like that, all of this comes loose. There's no gasket. There is one dowel pin. I assume this is just held on with RTV, as most components on the transmission is. And if you spin this, obviously the other components spin, and this is just basically the window into the transmission. Now I'm going to keep these bolts where they go so I don't lose anything. I'm going to set this on its face, although if I'm not mistaken this comes out a little bit, so I'll set a little 2x4 right there, and I'll start taking apart the rest of the transmission. As soon as I remove that inside 12mm bolt, you want to keep everything in order and make sure you don't lose any transmission bolts or mix them up with parts that they aren't corresponding to. So we are going to be removing the actual bell housing bolts, which are all 12mm. They go around the casing like so. And like regular B-Series transmission, I believe you have to take out the detent springs, which are right here and right here. And if I'm not mistaken, the reverse lock is right there. And I'll be removing those as well.
Really, wow, this is nice, organized.
Thank you. So I'm basically just tipping over the transmission right here to take out the balls that sit within the shift fork itself and under the bolt with the spring. We're going to collect all the bell housing bolts, keep all of these together, not to confuse with the rest. And keep in mind they are different sizes, so you're kind of want to have a mental note of which goes where. Now on the top of the transmission, there is this spot to open using a 1/2-inch breaker bar. And this is typically sealed by RTV, so there is a little bit of friction when removing it. This plug is taken off. Now inside, if I can get a closer view, there is this clip right there that needs to be separated. And you can do that with anything like regular needle nose pliers, or you can use some screwdrivers and pry it apart. I like to use these right here. They've always done well with me. It's very simple. Let's see if I can get the camera to align with me doing it. But basically, just stick it in there, spread it apart. And you want these to slip over top of the bearing so the bearing and the rest of the shaft assembly can slip down. And it's kind of locked into that open position. And now that that is ready to go, the case should be able to come right off. We also ended up taking off the selector as well as this bolt right here on the side of the transmission case, as well as on the top right there. I don't know if it was 100% necessary, but I removed those and then it came off completely. Now we have the gear stacks exposed. There's two 10mm bolts right here that hold the mechanism for the shift fork as well as the reverse. We are going to be removing that right now, and then we'll be able to free these two stacks along with the shift forks, because one of the main problems with these transmissions is that the 1-2 shift fork, this one right here specifically, likes to bend. So we are going to be welding on some basically gussets to reinforce it right there. And I think we might do the other ones as well, just to reinforce it. It's not necessary, but we might end up just doing it since we're already there. Gonna make sure to keep these in specific, not order, but make sure that they stay with the selector as well. Just put that right over. Set it off to the side. This is free. Everything should be good to lift the stacks. Now, it's pretty much like any other transmission at this point. You want to lift the two gear stacks as well as the forks together, because it comes off like one unit. And it should be free to go. All right, so those are off. Just want to make sure that everything stays in the correct location. And if you're not too familiar with transmissions, you just want to make sure you basically keep everything where it came out of. Now, the forks can come off. And this is the big problematic one. I think the design, being that it's really long right here, has that hole right there, and it's not reinforced or anything from the factory, that's pretty much the downfall. So we want to weld on a plate right here to right there, and on the other side as well. That way it has that extra reinforcement. Now that we have the transmission gear stacks off, this right here is the differential unit. And we're just gonna remove this straight out, which is kind of hard because you can't really get your fingers under. But when you can, it just comes out like that. And here we have the whole unit. You wanna come a little closer. As you can see, the spider gears are turning freely. It's an open diff. We don't wanna weld it because it kind of is pretty bad performance-wise on a front-wheel drive car to have a welded diff, even though we welded the rear. But we are going to be doing the phantom grip into this. All right, so I'm over here at SRP real quick, and these are not reverse thread. They're just normal lefty-loosey bolts, as we came to find out. So when you unbolt these, this whole assembly just kind of comes undone. And it's basically like how the rear differential was, just a small diff. And obviously this is still open diff, and we're going to be putting the phantom grip that I have right here inside of this to have a lock-in differential without having to weld it, because if you aren't familiar, front wheel drive and welding diffs isn't very, how do I put this? It's not very fun. All right, for the next portion, we're going to be removing this center pin right here so we can actually slide the phantom grip in. This is being held by another pin right there, which you're just going to be using a regular punch, as so, and hammer to take that pin out of the other pin so you can slide the large pin out and slip this in. So I'm just going to set the camera down real quick and I'll start doing that. Now we have both pins removed. Obviously, there's only going to be one way you can install it back, being that the pin goes through that side on this side right here. Now, the phantom grip is just basically going to slide right in between all of this. So we tried putting the phantom grip into the LSD using little retaining clips that it already has to let it open up once it's in here, and it's a little bit too big, so we're collapsing it completely right now and seeing if it'll be even usable on this. So we just took the measurement right there, 24.32 millimeters. That's fully collapsed instead of having it with little keepers, so it gets a little bit more, but we'll see if it'll even fit in there.
No.
It's not gonna fit.
No.
Way off?
Yeah. A lot. That's 2432, and inside there's 2280.
My God. If it's because it's the all-wheel drive one, or I don't know. Alright, so I actually ended up taking everything apart again, looking at the shims and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. I could have removed these two shims and then it would have given me like an extra 2 millimeters, although it's not recommended to remove any of the shims that are there from the factory, just because you want to have that little bit of give, I guess you could say. Then I measured the absolute smallest I could get it by having a pin, and it came out to, I want to say like 26 millimeters or something. I have the measurements written down on my phone using micrometers and everything. So after measuring the inside with the OEM shims, it came out to be like 3.9 millimeters smaller than what this is right here. So we're actually going to take this to the machine shop right next door and have them shave off about 2 millimeters of each side of this inner gear right here. Does your car run? Nope.
Yours ever do that? Nope.
It actually turns on though. So, what'd you say to me?
Are slow,
What?
period.
Alright, so I have these gears right here grinded down. I ended up just using a bench grinder. Actually, on the Phantom Grip's old channel from a couple years ago, that's exactly how they did it instead of machining it precisely. But I did it on the bench grinder, and then I did the rotating sanding discs to make it as flat as possible. It doesn't have to be anything crazy perfect, but it is good to have it as best as possible. Now I'm just going to set everything back into its location. This gets its shim. One for the bottom, one for the top. I'm going to do the same thing for the top one. And make sure you have a clean work area instead of what I have right now. Even though this isn't the final assembly, this is just for demonstration purposes at the moment. These also have backing shims, the smaller side gears. What I found easiest is to set the top right there and then kind of put your finger between each side gear, and when you go to put it in, lift with your middle finger. That way you can put it together. Let's see if I can demonstrate. I apologize ahead of time, I forgot my tripod at home, so don't have the best recording angles today. You kind of just lift it right there. And spin it around. Keep the washer on the back. And that's there. Perfectly aligned. So now the locker is just going to sit in this way. As you can see, it slides in quite easily. So obviously I still have the clips right there retaining the spring from not actually jumping up and compressing the top gears. So that's pretty much a straight shot right through the center, which is where this large pin will go in, and we're just going to install that backwards from as before. Remember, we removed the pin that goes right up here, so you're going to keep this side along with this side right there. And it doesn't matter really which side you enter it in. You can put the pin in through this side, or you can put it in through this side as well. So we're going to put this pin through here. It might be a little tough going in through the Phantom Grip, which if it is, you can kind of hammer it in a little bit. All right, now I have the pin completely in there as well as the phantom grip. Now all I have to do is put the locking pin. I'm gonna clean this off real quick before I actually set it in. Basically, we're just gonna put that right there and hammer it back into place. Afterwards, I'll show you taking these off. We already have the pin placed in here. We are gonna be removing this little stopper, I guess you could say. And depending on the height of everything, it might be a little harder than that. So you can basically just get a flathead screwdriver and pry it out. You wanna make sure you take out the dowels as well. And by doing that, we now have a locked differential. So this is basically not as aggressive as welding the diff or having a real LSD, but this is super cheap and still works effective.
And over here?
Yeah, friggin' smoke storm. Damn EJ Motors. Is that a vape thing in there? What is that, a turbo? This ain't no Subaru no more.
Subaru. It's a collab before Subaru and Toyota did it.
The best swap you can do besides the K-Series.
It's not an FRS.
He said it's an FRS. Alrighty guys, we just got back home. As you saw in the previous clips, we have the phantom grip already into the differential. Being that we welded the rear and have the phantom grip in the front, we have all 4 of the wheels for the drivetrain are going to be locked, and everything should be spinning once it's on jack stands, and it'll be a true all-wheel drive car, if you say. I'm not going to be doing the reinforcement of the shift forks in this video. That way I can get some content out to you immediately. I know a lot of people have been saying that the uploads have been lacking, and not to excuse myself, but I've been waiting on parts so I can do more specific videos rather than just doing a daily upload without much content. If you want to look at the smaller things of the build, make sure to follow the Instagram at Slowintegra right here. I try to do 2 or 3 clips a day of what I'm doing. I'm almost always doing something pertaining to cars, even if I'm before work or after work. So it's definitely a good follow if you want to go check that out. If not, make sure to stay tuned. Hopefully on Monday, 3 days from now, we should have gone back to the shop so we can weld the forks, because I want to do the shift forks reinforce and do another video for that. And in the meanwhile, make sure to just stay tuned. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. A lot of people have been saying that the spider gear modification by grinding it down with a little bench grinder might not be the safest method to do. It's actually what Phantom Grip themselves suggested in their video. I'll see if I can link it down below. They actually did that same exact method when they released their product and released the installation video, which is a very detailed installation video. You should watch the whole thing if you want to go with that method as well. And yeah, let us know what you think in the comment section below. I know I kind of drag on these exits, the outros for the videos. So if you aren't already subscribed, make sure to hit that subscribe button. And if you enjoy the video or the time that we actually put into developing everything and being able to record, make sure to hit the like button. We always appreciate the support. Thank you guys for watching and enjoy the rest of your night.